Ladies and gentlemen, you all want to know what my predictions are for the first weekend. First and foremost, I want to inform you guys that I am going to be on the LEC broadcast. So I won't be doing the live views because I'll be staying at the hotel. But what you will see on my YouTube channel, as always, I'm going to do the recaps. The recaps from my hotel room in the scuffed quality. I'm going to do the recaps. I am blessed to be on the LEC analyst desk for a couple of weeks. Like last split, I was for 1 week, which was already a fantastic blessing. But I'm going to be there LEC weekends, the 1st, the 3rd, the 6th. I will do the LEC recaps and post them on my YouTube channel with thoughts surrounding the games and the developments, because of course watching 5vs1s can be gruesome sometimes, so you guys are still in the loop about my opinions and thoughts. So that's going to be super exciting. It is of course the usual business. So first and foremost, we are going to do a prediction. This is of course without any information. These predictions could change after 1 day of play. But I think I just want to share my thoughts in regards to the teams, and this is going to be a very nice and cohesive way of doing so. So first and foremost, we have Fnatic versus XL. The changes that are coming in, we have Oscarinin and we have Advien in the team, and then we have XL with the introduction of Limit, and both of the coaching staffs of these teams have been changed. So this is already like a very exciting first match. I think the beauty of the format, of course, is we only get these matchups once in the BO1 system. So every matchup is unique in itself and there's no repetition. And I think that's super cool. The main thing to highlight here is that a lot of these teams are, the teams, especially XL and Fnatic, that dropped out of competition very early, had a lot more time to reassess and to practice. Keep in mind, the teams that were involved in the competition, they were locked to playing on patches that are quite old at this point in time. So we had 13.1. There was, of course, the regular split patch. And then we had 13.1.b, which is 13.2 in theory. Basically, these teams were, of course, specifically on these patches. Of course, I think it's fair to say that the patch changes haven't been super extensive. If you guys are wondering about what new things we see in champion selects on the games that we see 13.4, is we see a lot of YamatoCannon showing up, we see a lot of Aphelios showing up, a lot of the melee supports have gotten better, Caitlyn and Varus have some answers into them. I think, the changes to support items definitely made Ashe a little bit worse, and the answers and the counters, so to speak, to these champions do look stronger. So like Rakan is looking stronger with the changes, Nautilus looks stronger with the changes, Annie looks really fantastic as a flex pick into mid lane. We still see a lot of the Road of Ages champions in mid dominating, which is of course a big deal. You see the Graga still doing well, the Annie mid doing well, and the general progression overall is that we see a lot of less Lucian Nami, and we see a lot more like Aphelios lanes with the Thresh buffs. We see Rakan. Zeri is still doing really well. Zeri in a world where BT is an item and Shield Bow is an item, and the fact that inherently she steals shields in a meta that is very shield heavy because of all items. Think about Archangel Staff is something that is frequently bought. You have a lot of inherent shielding in champion kits. You have a Shield Bow shield. You have, of course, the shield from BT. You have Overheal, or a lot of shields in general, and Zeri steals them and gets move speed. And in a world where a lot of the other things get nerfed, like Lucian Nami, and Lucian Nami in a world where Varus, Lucian Nami are champions that are heavily reliant on landing poke before battles start. And poke is something that is generally a lot weaker due to the introduction of BT and the strength of BT. So that's something to pay attention to. I think that is like the biggest change. Another layer of it is Maokai got nerfed, Elise got nerfed, but there's still the core junglers that are still really strong that are being played. It's like these champions getting nerfed just put the champions that were right under them above again. So even though Elise Maokai got nerfed, Wukong, Vi, Lee Sin, Sejuani are the juicers. It's like Sejuani is still looking monster somehow. Sejuani is just dodging nerfs left and right. She's just, she's just tootsie rolling, all over the place and dodging every nerf on the planet like this. Even though she has insane high presence, So a lot of the poke champions are nerfed because of the BT introduction and so forth. And we continue. So I just wanted to highlight some of the patch changes, but inherently, a lot of the things remain the same. I think between Fnatic and XL, tough to predict, right? But I'm going to lean towards Fnatic on this one. I think that I still have high expectations for Fnatic in terms of Humanoid being there. I think Oscarin, even though I think I've talked about the mismanagement of Fnatic, I do think that the changes in terms of, like, I think Oscarin is a player that has potential, you know? I think a player that has potential. I think he can be good, and he's going to maybe bring a fresh take to something, right? I think that Adrien maybe brings a fresh take to things, and I think already the fact that they made some changes can move them in a positive direction. So I don't think Fnatic is going to blow our mind, but I think that they will, you know, at least my impression is that they're going to be a team that has something constructive to work on and something to actually build upon, which is something that they clearly lacked. They were in survival mode from day one, and I think that big chunk of practice that they have leading into the tournament competition is super important. SK versus BDS, I think SK is just a stronger team. I think that they've shown more, and I think that the meta is definitely something that is going to be very positive for SK. I think that in terms of what they like to play bot with the Zeri and you know, Varus being worse, I think that's something that is a positive change. I think you remove Caitlyn for SK, and then I think they're going to be in a very comfortable bot lane position here. Of course, Crowny and Labrov can compete with that, and I think Irrelevant is sturdy enough not to completely lose the game on his own against Adam, which is something that we've seen against Adam from other players. I think the key thing as well, I think BDS just don't have enough power in the jungle mid position to really highlight the weakness of SK, because their weakness in that department is bigger than SK's. I say weakness is just in the contrast of everything else. I think Markoon has been the better jungler in comparison to Shio. He's just been more well-rounded. I think BDS, of course, they have their wild card in Adam, and I think that's going to be interesting to see how that develops, right, in this matchup. But I'm leaning towards SK. Team Vitality versus Mad Lions. This is an absolute banger, right? If you look at my LEC tier list, Vitality acquiring an upset, it really shot up in ranks here for me. It's like, this is what I view currently on paper, right? But I think this is something that can quickly change. I feel a lot less confident in the bottom 5 due to how the format works. But upset joining Vitality, I just put them on 3rd position. I think it's important to be aware of the fact that even though Upset was going to improve their bot lane status immensely, I think that Vitality need to address a lot of their other issues, which is of course the consistency of bow, and in terms of how they manage communication, how they set up for objectives, and how they play together, you know? I think that's a very important part. But already not being in that position where you are walking into a game with one leg less is definitely going to put them in a position where their other leg can breathe a bit, you know? Because I think Vitality's top side often try to overperform in order to compensate for their lacking bottom side. So at least with this in mind, Vitality is going to be able to play games that allow them to extend into the deeper parts that they actually need to improve on. So that is the main curious thing. Another thing to add here, once again, Team Vitality is a team that dropped out of playoffs earlier than Mad Lions. If you think about the teams, Mad Lions, SK, G2 and Koi, they had to play the finals weekend. And when you play the finals weekend, you get to play one extra week and you're going to delay your break week additionally. That's a very important part to add here. All the other teams were practicing already on 13.3 and 13.4, so they got a lot more time to kind of prepare themselves for the coming split, while G2, Mad Lions, SK, and of course Koi, they needed to take some time off after having a fairly gruesome schedule. So that is going to play part here. I think in terms of predicting the victor here, it's going to be quite tricky, but my first initial instinct due to circumstances and what we've seen from Kazi so far, I want to lean towards the Vitality opening match here, that they're going to do better. Astralis versus Koi, I have to lean towards Koi. I don't know how... I think Lider is a strong player and on paper is a individual upgrade in comparison to Dior. But it's always interesting when you mess with certain elements of the game, how your players need to adjust and how they're going to be able to perform. In the best case scenario, you have an Astralis where 113 and Lider, they get to invade and they get to press their mechanical skill onto the enemy and they get to fight, and then they snowball that into bottom side, and Astralis have some early game that is not reliant on individual overperformances. That would be very interesting to see for Astralis, but at the same time, you know, Dior has been a core of this roster for a long time, so that there might be that process of rebuilding still. While I think Koi's identity is still super clear, I think Astralis might need a little bit more time to get, you know, the ball rolling. But once again, same thing for Koi, right? They're taking time off, maybe they are not playing as hard on this patch, but I think, you know, Koi is a safer bet here. Team Heretics versus G2, I think G2 all the way, right? I don't think we need to talk about this so much. I think G2 is going to win the split. I think after draft, maybe I can think maybe G2 is going to lose because sometimes they just have a little bit too much fun. But G2 the same way, right? They're going to take some time off after the finals. They don't need to go and hit the ground running super hard. So that is, you know, the potential for, you know, an upset from the other teams. Mad Lions versus BDS, I think Mad Lions is going to be favored there. Vitality versus XL, I think Vitality is going to be favored there. Fnatic versus SK, I think SK is going to be favored there. Astralis versus G2, I think G2 is going to be favored there. Match of the week is Team Heretics versus Koi, due to, of course, the Spanish derby or whatever you want to call it. I think Koi is going to be stronger in this one. All right? I think Team Heretics, you know, they rely on very specific champs that is kind of band-aiding, you know, their macro, and Team Heretics have this issue that they're always just 5 people on midwave showing and not creating any presence and waiting for the mistakes of Koi. And that's something that can work because in the matchup between Team Heretics and Koi the last time, what happened was Koi tried to play Fiora. They played Sivir, Yuumi, Fiora, Victor, and Elise. And that composition didn't really have that much cohesion, while Team Heretics had a very easy front-to-back composition that allowed them to get away with their flaws in macro. So I'm very curious to see the development of Jack Spectra specifically on this roster, because I see growth in the Jack Spectra department, but I don't see that potential in Ruby and Evi just yet. Azir getting nerfed and also K'Sante getting nerfed is an inherent nerf to Team Heretics unless they find ways to reinvent themselves. I do think that it's going to be interesting to pay attention to, but I have high hopes for Jack Spectrum. So SK Gaming, Team BDS here, Mad Lions, and then G2 of course, and then Team Vitality. Those are my predictions, and you can see how my information I've shared kind of melts together. Another layer of predictions that I want to make. So this is going to be my bold prediction for the split, okay? My bold prediction for the split is that we're going to have 2 new teams in the bottom 2. That is my bold prediction. We're going to have 2 new teams in the bottom 2. You say, oh, Yamato, that's kind of crazy. But this format really lends itself to some variance. And I think that we have, if we look at the bottom 5 teams, theoretically, I think that these guys can definitely, you know, it's like, when we look at the bottom 5 teams, this is basically these teams. This is the bottom 5, in my opinion, right? You win a BO1, you have positive momentum, things are going to get crazy, things are going to get really funky, really fast. So these 5 teams, I think that the format lends itself to a lot of variance due to the psychological factors behind things and how you assess a meta and how you basically adapt as we go. And I think that these 5 teams here, even though I think Team BDS is probably like the team on paper that I have the highest expectation for, I think in some cases it can look dicey. I am a big believer of Crowny, Labrov, and Adam, but you know, you don't know how this is exactly going to play out, right? And Astralis same, they have some pieces that make sense, right? But that can also create a lot of variance. So that's my bold prediction. We're going to have 2 different teams in the bottom 2 due to the nature of the format. Another layer of predictions that I want to put on you, which is it's not a bold prediction, it's just a logical prediction. I believe G2 and Mad Lions are going to be our representative at MSI. But Yamato, Team Vitality is looking so fantastic. The issue we have, okay? The main thing here is like, Yamato, what about Vitality? Vitality, in a lot of cases, okay? Vitality needs to win the split in order to go to MSI. So in my mind, right, I think G2 winning, you know, G2 first place, I take that for granted, right? So what happens is when G2 gets first place in 2 splits, what is going to happen is that the team with the highest championship points is going to qualify to MSI, right? And in order for that to happen, Mad Lions, right? What needs to happen is Mad Lions needs to end up in the bottom 6. Basically, the spring points are going to be valued higher, right? So in a situation where Vitality and Mad Lions is tied for points, you have a circumstance where Vitality wins the tie. But if for some reason, right, let's say Vitality gets second place in the split and Mad Lions is third or fourth, they will then qualify through points. So Vitality, if they really want to go to MSI, they are praying for the downfall of the teams above them in the standings. If the teams have the same points, the team that has more points from Spring is going to win the tiebreaker. You know, it's fair to have high hopes for Vitality. They have a lot to figure out. I think Upset is a very big upgrade. But Vitality needs to finish minimum second. And they need to hope for the downfall of some of their opponents. Because another layer of this, right? Let's say Vitality gets second place, okay? And then let's say Koi gets third again, which isn't completely unreasonable, right? Koi getting third again. That's something that could happen. Then Koi qualifies through points because they have 160. So basically, Vitality, in order to get to MSI, they need to win the split or pray for the downfall of Koi/Mad. So there is a world where Koi, third, they have 160 points, right? And Mad, you know, if they can either have 180, 160, right? This is when when they get fourth place. If Mad gets fourth place, right? So that is a big thing, right? So my prediction isn't super bold, but Mad Lions qualifying to MSI is a very, very big. They have a very, very, very good odds. Not only because of their split results from the previous one, but also because G2 look like a very strong favorite to win the split again. Unless they fill the roster with Kadril and Forgiven Grey and Promiscu, which is not going to happen. So for those who wonder, G2 is already qualified to MSI. Whoever gets first in Spring is going to get the better seed, because there's a play-in portion of MSI, and then there's a main stage portion of MSI. And the main stage portion of MSI, LCK has 2 seeds auto-qualified, and then there's 3 seeds that the teams are competing for, and LPL, NA, and of course the LEC is competing there in the play-ins. Alright, I think I've shared my thoughts now about the LEC. I think in terms of the meta, I also mentioned already what I think. It is going to be interesting to see how it plays out. The main thing, once again, what we've learned from this format is that momentum is a real thing. We're going to be playing on a new patch. This is my current tier list. This is my tier list. I think bottom 5, like here it's tough to judge the bottom 5, but I think this is the most fair. I think Crowny, Labrov, Adam deserve to be here high. I think Astralis as well with Kobe and Younghoon have been really strong. Finn is on the up and up. I think 113 has been like interesting. But all in all, this is my take on the situation.